What if I told you one man nearly ruled all of Europe? A man born on a small island, who rose through the chaos of revolution to crown himself emperor, bending nations to his will and rewriting the rules of war and politics along the way. His name? Napoleon Bonaparte. But behind the glory lies a storm of ambition, betrayal, and catastrophic missteps. How did a boy from Corsica climb to the highest throne in Europe? How did he outwit enemies on the battlefield and in the halls of power? And how did it all come crashing down, leaving him exiled and broken, a prisoner on a distant island? This isn't just a story of war. It's the story of vision, obsession, and the thin line between greatness and downfall. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769 on the Mediterranean island of Corsica, just months after it was taken over by France. His family was noble but far from wealthy, and young Napoleon grew up with a mix of pride, ambition, and a chip on his shoulder. He was sent to mainland France for school, where his Corsican accent, darker complexion, and modest background made him an outsider. But that outsider status lit a fire in him. At the military academy, he devoured books on strategy, history, and philosophy. While other students played, Napoleon mapped out wars. By 16, he became a second lieutenant in the French army, quiet, intense, and already obsessed with greatness. Then came the French Revolution, shaking France to its core. As old elites fell and chaos reigned, the doors of opportunity swung open for ambitious minds. Napoleon saw the revolution not as a threat, but as a ladder. He didn't have powerful friends, but he had ideas, confidence, and a ruthless will to win. In a world that was breaking apart, Napoleon wasn't just surviving. He was calculating every step. Because for him, greatness wasn't a dream, it was inevitable, and he intended to claim it. As France tore itself apart during the Revolution, Napoleon's chance arrived. In 1793, he helped crush a royalist rebellion in the city of Toulon, using bold, unconventional tactics that stunned everyone, including his superiors. Overnight, he was promoted to brigadier general. But his true breakout came a few years later. In 1796, at just 26, Napoleon was given command of the French army in Italy. Most thought he was too young. Instead, he delivered a masterpiece. He outmaneuvered larger Austrian forces, winning a series of rapid, brilliant victories that reshaped the war and his reputation. His troops adored him. He shared their hardships, walked among them, and inspired them with fiery speeches and impossible confidence. Napoleon didn't just lead from the front, led into legend. And he wasn't done. In 1798, he launched a bold campaign in Egypt, hoping to disrupt British trade routes and expand France's influence. Though militarily mixed, it boosted his status back home. He returned to France not just as a general, but as a national hero. In a country exhausted by years of turmoil, the people weren't just looking for a leader, they were looking for a savior, and Napoleon was ready to answer that call. In 1799, France was crumbling. Corruption plagued the government, and the public was disillusioned. Sensing his moment, Napoleon made his boldest move yet, a political coup. On the 9th of November, with a mix of military muscle and strategic charm, he overthrew the Directory and established a new government, the Consulate. At just 30, he named himself First Consul, placing near absolute power in his hands. But that wasn't enough. By 1804, Napoleon went a step further. He crowned himself Emperor of the French. In a dramatic ceremony at Notre Dame Cathedral, he took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. The message was clear. His power came not from religion, not from royalty, but from himself. As emperor, he reshaped France. He reformed education, centralized government, and introduced the Napoleonic Code, a legal system so influential, parts of it are still in use today. While kings ruled by birthright, Napoleon ruled by brilliance and ambition. He wasn't content with leading France, he had his sights set on all of Europe. And as the drums of war began to beat louder, the world would soon discover that Napoleon Bonaparte was not just a ruler, he was a force of nature. Napoleon was unstoppable. He shattered coalitions, humbled emperors, and redrew the map of Europe at lightning speed. At the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805, he delivered one of the most brilliant victories in military history. Outnumbered and outgunned, Napoleon used fog, deception, and split-second timing to crush the combined forces of Austria and Russia. It wasn't just a win, it was a masterclass. Then came Jena, Wagram, and a string of victories that left Europe breathless. One by one, kingdoms fell or bent to his will. Napoleon crowned his family members as kings across the continent, turning Europe into a web of puppet regimes. But his empire wasn't just built on battlefields. He modernized administrations, abolished feudal systems, and spread the Napoleonic Code across borders. Even his enemies grudgingly admired his reforms. By 1810, he ruled over 70 million people. From Spain to Poland, his word was law. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming, resistance was building, conquered nations resented his rule. And Napoleon's relentless ambition meant he was always pushing forward, never satisfied, never stopping. At his peak, Napoleon looked invincible. But the higher the climb, the greater the fall. In 1812, Napoleon made a decision that would haunt him forever. He invaded Russia. Confident in his power, he assembled the Grand Armée, over 600,000 strong, the largest force Europe had ever seen. His goal? To force the Russian Tsar into submission and expand his empire even further. But Russia had no intention of fighting fair. They retreated deeper into the country, burning villages and supplies as they went. Napoleon's army advanced, but food disappeared. Roads turned to mud, and winter crept in. By the time he reached Moscow, it was abandoned and set ablaze. With no victory and no shelter, the brutal Russian winter began its assault. Disease, starvation, and freezing temperatures decimated his troops. When Napoleon finally retreated, only a fraction of his army made it out alive. It was a catastrophe, military, political, and personal. Europe smelled blood. Countries that had once bowed to Napoleon now rose against him. The myth of his invincibility had shattered. For the first time in years, Napoleon was on the defensive. His empire was crumbling, and the world that once feared him now saw a chance to destroy him. The tide had turned, and it wouldn't turn back. After the disaster in Russia, Napoleon's enemies closed in. One by one, alliances formed against him. Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia united to take him down. In 1814, they stormed into France. Paris fell. Napoleon, facing betrayal from his own generals, was forced to abdicate. He was exiled to the island of Elba, a tiny speck off the coast of Italy. But Napoleon wasn't done. Less than a year later, he escaped, landed back in France, and marched toward Paris. People cheered. Soldiers joined him. The king fled. In just 20 days, he reclaimed power in what became known as the 100 Days. But Europe wouldn't tolerate a second reign. At Waterloo in 1815, his army was defeated for good. This time, there was no comeback. Napoleon was exiled again far away, to the remote island of St. Helena. There, surrounded by ocean and enemies, the emperor lived out his final years. Napoleon died in 1821, alone and far from the empire he once ruled, but his legacy never faded. Was he a genius or a tyrant? A liberator or a dictator? Historians still argue, but what's clear is that he changed the world. The Napoleonic Code influenced legal systems across continents. His campaigns rewrote the art of war, and his rise from obscurity to emperor still captivates minds centuries later. In just 52 years, he lived a dozen lifetimes filled with brilliance, ambition, and tragedy. If history teaches us anything, it's this: greatness always comes at a price. Like and subscribe for more epic stories from history.